Hey, my name is Amoga, co-founder and CEO of Carbon Origins. We're a robotics and VR company on a mission to make robots commonplace. So we're a group of scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs. We have landed robots on Mars, we've launched suborbital rockets, we've deployed satellite constellations, developed VR technologies for Disney. We're very passionate about deep tech, and we see robotics as the future of front-end labor. And our goal is to incubate that in a location, in a place where it can get the most TLC. We originally started the company in California, but we moved to Minnesota a few months ago. Really affordable to build robots in the United States here in Minnesota. There are a lot of contract manufacturers here with the right expertise. There are other companies building robots here. It is going to be the hotbed for robot manufacturing. The reason is, if you can build Skippies, our robots, to work in the Minnesota weather and geography, they can work anywhere.
Now, when you hire someone with a disability, you've immediately led by example. You've said you trust a new perspective, that you're confident in that person, in yourself, and your team. Now, I work with a theater company, and we have signs on the wall that say, "Work your quirk," and radical inclusion. They emphasize that what makes us different gives us strength, a new perspective, a creative edge. In Cajun cooking, there's an ingredient called the lagniappe, and it's that little something something that keeps you coming back. Hire somebody with a disability. It's the lagniappe thing to do.
So, you've decided to start your own business. You have the resources to sell or the services your new customers need. So what's next? Here's a simple checklist to help you get started. First, choose your business structure. Do you want a sole proprietorship, partnership, limited liability company, or corporation? Each form has tax and financial consequences. Next, check to make sure the name you want to use for your business is available. You can do this by checking with the Minnesota Secretary of State office. If you want to be a sole proprietor, all you have to do is register the business name with the Secretary of State office. Or if your business is going to be an LLC or a corporation, when you file the business structure registration with the Secretary of State's office, that registration also includes the business name. After that, you may need to obtain federal and state tax identification numbers from the Internal Revenue Service and the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Note that some businesses won't need to take this step. Need is determined by the number of business owners, if the business will have employees, and if the business makes taxable sales or provides taxable services. Next, obtain any necessary licenses and permits from state and local government. Then you will need to buy or rent space for the business and set up phone and internet service. You'll also want to start a banking and credit relationship with a bank or other financial institution.
Great, absolutely. Looking forward to getting started shortly, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience. We're going to do a quick sound check. Eric, we're testing 1, 2, 3. How are we doing with the sound?
My name is John Hauk. I am president of LightRun Incorporated. LightRun manufactures and sells a specialized unweighting tool for survivors of stroke, traumatic brain injury, and other injuries. I started out my career working for a company called Cardiac Pacemakers, then later on St. Jude Medical, along with a couple of startups in between. So I came out of the cardiac world, and Minnesota has been a great place for a medical device career. Our product has been sold and is currently being used in Hennepin County Medical Center, the VA Hospital in Minneapolis, North Memorial Hospital, and we're soon going to be delivering a system to Courage Kenny. So we are getting local traction in spite of the pandemic, and our goal is to go nationwide in 2022 and beyond.
Well, I met Andrew in 2010. He was a recent graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So he already had his education before he came to us. And he was looking for work as an architect.
And I applied for over 200 jobs all over the US. I applied for jobs in Hawaii, New York, Florida, and didn't get any sort of response. And after I'd applied for all of those different jobs, I realized that the job market right now is really low and that I was facing discrimination, as were a lot of people with disabilities.
So he's deaf and the world is hearing, and so of course the biggest barrier for him was communication. He worked with MCIL on job interviewing skills, and he did a very nice job talking about his experience and his work qualifications, but he did struggle a little bit with the accommodation issue, and so we worked a little bit more on that.
It was my good fortune to meet Andrew back in 2007, 2008. Andrew was someone who was deaf and he had graduated from architectural school. Really my charge was, how can I help Andrew network, take smaller steps given what the economy was.
He really advocated in my job search. He wants people to get out there. He connected me with people in the field because that's what I needed. He reached out to MnDOT, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, in the Affirmative Action Office. He contacted Lynette Geschwin. She was the head of the Affirmative Action Office at MnDOT. And she was able to set up a contract job for me to inspect airport terminals. It was a fascinating job, but again, it was contract work. And they actually didn't seem to see me as a person with disabilities. Based on my resume, they said via email that they were just really impressed with my experience, and they wanted to give me a chance.
When we launched Andrew, we were not focused on his disability. We helped him develop the skills to market himself as an architect. No one with a disability gets a job because of their disability. It's all about skills, and Andrew's a perfect example of someone that took what we helped him learn and was able to independently get a job in the private sector.
Do you run a small business in Minnesota? Are you trying to expand your operations? Or need help adjusting to changes brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic? Then contact your local Small Business Development Center.
We'd like you to know that whether you're starting
devin.henry@state.mn.us. With that, here's Commissioner Grove.
Great. Thank you, Devin. Hello, everybody. Steve Grove here, Commissioner of Deed. Boy, we're excited to be with you today. This is a really exciting announcement. Today, Minnesota is announcing the single largest investment in our state's history for broadband internet. We are issuing over almost $100 million going out to 61 projects in 48 counties in every corner of our state to provide high-speed broadband internet access that we estimate will help 33,000 homes or businesses get online who are not online today. It's a stunningly large amount of money and a huge scope of influence with these dollars. We're grateful to the legislature for putting this forward, and we're today excited to announce these award winners. All of that happens with partnership. In a little bit, you'll get to hear some of the winners of these grants today and those who've made this possible, because it is really a moment for us to lean forward in this space to make sure everyone has really the plumbing of the 21st century in their homes and businesses. We have some great partners here to share more. I think we want to give a little bit of a perspective here on just what the challenge is in Minnesota as it relates to broadband. Obviously, we're on a broadband connection right now. We all understand the importance of this resource in our lives. And of course, COVID just highlighted that for so many more people who are now working from home or finding other ways to access services. We estimate that this year between 240,000 and 291,000 households in Minnesota lack access to high-speed broadband internet. That's a lot of people. And for every percentage we get closer to full coverage, it gets a little bit harder because it is tough to get broadband internet access to some of the more rural parts of our state. There are geographical concerns, there are commercial concerns, the market has to ensure that the companies can make this worth it for themselves, and that's where our broadband program really comes in. We have made this a priority in the Wallace Flanagan administration since the beginning of the governor's time in office. He campaigned on it in his first campaign for governor and certainly in his reelection as well. He believes deeply that this is a critical resource for our state and that we need to finish the job on broadband. We also were able to convene over the last year, as many of you may have seen, a Council on Economic Expansion, a group of 15 leaders from across the state's economy that spent months putting together a plan for what the next 10 years of Minnesota's economy should look like. And that council looked at a lot of different things, and they oriented their roadmap for the next 10 years for our state around 5 key commitments, and one of them was on infrastructure. Infrastructure, of course, is the job of government. You hear a lot about it these days because of all the federal activity there and certainly the investments in our state as well. And in that roadmap focused on infrastructure, the Governor's Council on Economic Expansion really focused a lot on broadband. They implored our state to finish the job, ensure that every house is connected. And more specifically, they spoke to some themes, I think, within broadband that we are really holding close to our work here at Deed as we move forward. One is just achieving equitable access to broadband across the state and making sure that that access is affordable. Second is to ensure every child has access to the internet and the right hardware for training and online learning. Whether that's through your schools or through extracurriculars, every kid needs access to the internet if you're going to grow and learn in today's economy. The council also asked us to focus on affordable access and the appropriate hardware for every person in the state to have access to government services, healthcare, jobs, community resources, and social connections. And the council really made a heavy focus on really driving economic competitiveness in our state through the access to broadband. You can't start a company in today's world without broadband internet access, and that should be possible in every single corner of our state. So we are committed to finishing the job. Today's announcement gets us all that much closer, but there's more work to be done, and you can expect a lot more conversations on this, I'm sure, in the coming legislative session as we navigate just what it's going to take to meet the governor's goal of connecting every house in the state to a high-speed broadband internet connection. Our Deed Broadband Grant Program is worth highlighting here for a moment, just for those who are on the call who haven't been as familiar with it. It is a really important program. It's actually a nation-leading program on broadband. Many other states have taken the blueprint Minnesota has built for these grants and copied them in their own environments. National organizations often highlight Minnesota's program as one of the nation's leading examples of the right role that a state government can play in broadband infrastructure. The program is in some ways rather simple. It essentially provides grants that can fund up to half the cost of deploying broadband infrastructure. A single project is capped at about $5 million. And speed is the key goal. And you'll hear about this from our partners today and certainly from the chair of the governor's task force, Teddy Backelli. That task force and the legislature has really pushed Deed to make sure that every single household that benefits from these grant dollars has at least 100 megabytes down, 20 megabytes up of service. Basically, that means when you have that kind of service, you're not stressed out about whether your connection is going to hang on, whether you can do a video conference, whether you can consume digital media. That's the level of service that you need to truly be effective in using broadband in your home. So I think putting that in context, this program historically has given about $130 million out in grants since its founding back in 2014. So today's announcement of $100 million additional dollars in grants is just a huge acceleration of that program's impact, almost double what we've spent over the last 8 years of the existence of the program here in Minnesota. Good news is this: we were able to award so many of these grant applications that came in today, again in 48 different counties, but there is more on the way. We are proud to announce today that additionally, we'll be issuing a $67.6 million RFP in just a couple of weeks here for more broadband deployment. This is coming from $25 million from the legislature that came through the general fund, and an additional $42.6 million in federal funding as well. So you can keep your eyes open for that on DEED's website. It'll come out, I think, around December 19th or so. But we are rolling right into the next round of these dollars because we want to move as quickly as we can to get shovels in the ground and broadband moving throughout the state moving forward. So there's a lot that our broadband program does. And there's a lot of federal funding sources here, too, that we're navigating alongside state general funds. And I'm just really pleased here next to introduce Bree Mackey, the director of our Office of Broadband here at DEED. She started the position just a few months ago, and she is off to the races. She's going to share a bit more about the program, where we're headed, and some of the key issues that we're really grappling with as we tackle this for the state. So, Bree, over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner. And also, I just want to say what an honor and a privilege it is to be serving in this role during such a monumental time for Minnesota and for broadband across our state. And also just a quick thank you to the incredible Office of Broadband staff who really worked and is dedicated to making this program such a success. With that, Commissioner Grove did mention the Border to Border program, and we're really excited to announce this next round. And with that, we're happy to report the line extension program is online and open for applications right now. And we really encourage our residents and our businesses that lack broadband and to reach out to their service providers, but also just go online and fill out that application. And that will start the process for this program and for people across the state to really get that extension from their the line that is so close but not quite there. It is a $15 million program, and providers will have access to that. So again, just encourage people that are underserved and unserved, at the 25-3 level to go in and enter their information on that website on our portal. And I just also want to take the time to really thank our incredible providers who were so instrumental in getting this bill in front of the legislature, and it passed in 2022. So just thank you and recognize that it takes all of us working together to really achieve these goals. As Commissioner Grove did mention, there is a lot of federal dollars heading our way too, and that is thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure bill that Congress passed. This bill has $65 billion in funding to make broadband available to all people in the United States across our country. There are two components of this infrastructure bill that we're really going to be working on at the Office of Broadband. One is the Broadband Equity Access and Deployment Program, which we call BEAD. And this has money in there to really help identify locations that do not have reliable broadband connections. And it's also based on the FCC maps. And I just want to put a strong emphasis on that right now the map portal is open on the FCC website, and encourage all of our providers in our communities to go on and make sure that these maps are accurate. And I'm going to put a plug for the website because this is just incredibly important. It's broadbandmap.fcc.gov. And again, it's really important in our infrastructure plan to have correct maps so that we can really understand the unserved areas in Minnesota. We're also just in this work developing our 5-year infrastructure plan. So really excited about this work and really coming together as a state to understand the needs in our communities with our providers and all of our residents. The other part of this incredible work is digital equity. And so there is money there, $2.7 billion for states across the nation to really focus on enabling the development of digital inclusive ecosystems that residents need in order to have not only digital access, but also the tools to thrive. And so this meaningful work is underway already, and we're really excited to really get focused in on the community engagement and the outreach with our partners to identify all of our incredible assets that we have, but also recognize that there's still gaps and barriers and that can be improved. And then I also just want to share that these plans will be coordinated, and we're calling it the Connecting One Minnesota Plan. And so we're really excited about this work and hope that everybody is willing, able, and excited to engage with us to create the best plan that we can for both infrastructure and digital equity in Minnesota. And I'll just put a plug. There is a date coming for our great kickoff event. So keep on our website for more information. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to the commissioner.
Great, thank you, Bree. I mean, as you can tell, just hearing Bree give that overview, there's just a lot happening in broadband right now, and a lot of dollars moving, and a real sense of urgency here in Minnesota to finish the job. So that takes a lot of different avenues of support and focus, and all of it's built around this public-private partnership. And that's why we're thrilled to have some private sector leaders here today to provide some further context on the importance of this announcement and of this issue. I'm going to turn first to Bill Eccles. He is one of our grantees. He's the CEO of BevCom in Southern Minnesota. It's a longtime partner of DEED. They received 2 grants in today's announcement, and they've used the border-to-border program previously as well. So Bill, give us a sense of what these grants mean to you and your customers.
Yeah, thanks a lot for giving me a chance to talk today. And thank you for awarding us the 2 grants. What these grants will do is it's going to allow us to build a dedicated fiber optic network to roughly 600 homes that are out in farm area. And so BevCom's a small broadband service provider serving 25 communities and the rural area between those communities in southern Minnesota. So these 600 homes, the people that live there, they're going to be able to participate in telehealth. The farms will be able to keep up with precision ag. It's every day we get inquiries from people saying, I am moving to this location. Is there fiber optics available? I need it for my job. We'll get inquiries from people coming from California saying, I want to move back home. I can work remotely. What's available for broadband? So like you said, we've been working with OBD for quite a few years. We started building fiber out into the rural areas about 7 years ago. And what we found is, I mean, the way we can fix or overcome this challenge of rural broadband, it's getting everybody to the table. It's our local counties, local townships, the providers, and then OBD is providing this framework where we can all work together. So thank you.
Thank you, Bill, for your partnership, and excited to see these 2 grants go into action. I'm going to turn next to Ty Hoagland over from East Center Energy. And East Center Energy received 3 grants, and I believe these were in Pine, Kennebec, and Isanti counties, Ty. And I think they're your first broadband grants, if I'm remembering correctly. Would love to hear your take on the program and the importance of today's announcement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for allowing us to speak, and thanks to DEED and Office of Broadband for these 3 grant awards. This is really going to be a great kickstart to our project. Being the newcomer in the game here, but this is the project we're looking at as a large-scale regional project. Really solve this digital divide in East Central Minnesota. We also serve some of northwestern Wisconsin, and our mission is just to ensure that all of our members have access to high-speed internet. We've got about 55,000 members, roughly equates to about 120,000 residents. The total project is just over 6,000 miles of fiber that would be needed, $350 million in scope. So these grants are essential in the kickstart, like I said earlier, but it's about 13% of our overall goal in terms of grant awards. We've got a lot of communities that are anxiously awaiting these announcements. So it was exciting to hear when we heard about this the other day. When I say communities, we met with all 14 counties we serve electrically. We met with over 50 townships, and they're in dire need. Isanti County is ranked 81st out of 87 in terms of broadband availability. Pine County is ranked 86th out of 87, and Kennebec County is ranked 87th out of 87. So the 3 grants themselves were passed by about 7,500 homes and businesses, roughly 15,000 Minnesota residents that are now going to have access to high-speed internet that they didn't have before. The impact on, you mentioned it, telehealth, remote learning, remote work, and just a complete game changer, we feel, in terms of economic development. And then lastly, I'd say is we see this progression of this intelligent electric grid. And so also see major value in not just serving to our members, but also continuing to make the integration of energy efficient technologies much easier throughout our electric grid as well. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Ty. And just hearing you talk about it, I mean, broadband is such an enabler of so many other things that we desperately need to be a modern economy in our state. It's just this kind of force multiplier, if you will, across a whole bunch of vectors. So thank you to you and Bill just for your extraordinary leadership in putting forward such great applications. 59 other projects beyond those you've just heard about today are being issued today. This is just one or 2 examples, but we're thrilled to highlight them here. I'm going to turn next to Nancy Hoffman, and if you follow Broadband, you definitely know Nancy. She's been a long-time advocate for broadband funding in Greater Minnesota in particular. She's the Economic Development Champion in Chisago County and the founding chair of the Rural Broadband Coalition. Nancy, you've been working on this for a lot of your career, and we're very grateful for that. Curious how you would qualify today's announcement from your perspective as someone who has such expertise in the field.
Yes, you know, when I first started in economic development, I really never thought I would be working on broadband. And I hear my counterparts around the state saying the same things. It's really become such an important part of our work. And over time, we've seen more and more of the need for fast, reliable broadband, and it's just more critical to growing our economies and trying to be competitive in all aspects of rural life. COVID certainly amplified the need for fast, reliable broadband. Across our rural areas in Minnesota, we saw schools, they were handing out hotspots so that students could study. Businesses had to learn how to use online sales in order just to stay in business. Folks that were now going to be working from home had to, if they didn't have good broadband, they had to find a place where they could work and they could take a Zoom call or they could send files. And, you know, this actually became kind of a desirable and productive way of doing business and working, that it even makes it more important now to have better broadband. In Minnesota, the Border to Border Broadband Grant Program has already been extremely helpful in many parts of the states. We've been fortunate to have 3 grants here. We still have a ways to go in our county, though. This additional $95 million announced today will be so helpful for the rural students with education, patients to access healthcare. Businesses can reach their customers, job seekers find their work, and even farmers plant and fertilize with precision with broadband. Let alone, we all still want to be able to access broadband so that we can surf the net and watch movies and play games. It's very important to residents as they choose where they're going to live. So thank you, Commissioner Grove, the governor, the legislature, for making these funds available to our communities that are lacking broadband.
Well, thank you, Nancy. Very well said. And, you know, this is the role of government, right? To find a market gap, to partner with the private sector, to do things only government can do to improve the lives of our state. So it's just such an important program for Minnesota. I'm going to ask Teddy McKelly to bring it on home for us. Teddy is the chair of the governor's task force on broadband and leads a body of individuals who help guide the governor and our state in terms of how we should be looking at this issue and the goals we should set for ourselves. And Teddy is the CTO and senior vice president over at Land O'Lakes. So this is part of his day job as well as he thinks about connecting our agricultural community too. So Teddy, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Grove, and thank you for getting us to this spot, right? This is a very exciting day that we're able to award these grants and for organizations to be able to take advantage and connect Minnesotans. I mean, we see that every day, right? Like we saw it, during COVID when you didn't have it, it was really a disaster. And Nancy talked about, kids at schools using hotspots. I mean, that's almost, I wouldn't say almost, it's unacceptable, right? That's we're at that level. So getting every Minnesotan connected is super important. And we've talked about schooling, we talked about healthcare. but even just connecting with loved ones. I mean, just bringing it home for me, even for my children to be able to connect with grandparents using broadband and having sort of that deeper connection means so much, right? And so we have all these intangible benefits that come with that sort of force multiplier. And it really is the plumbing of the 21st century. And that 100 megabits per second download, 20 megabits per second upload. I mean, we want to get there. But I'm guessing that that's going to be the minimum soon enough, and we're going to have to push the envelope because more things are going to happen going forward. Small to mid-sized businesses can really take advantage and diversify themselves and think about their businesses in a different way. New and exciting jobs will be created as a result of this. I know there's some statistics out there. There's a $47 billion of additional GDP that'll be had as a result of having broadband. But if I bring it home closer to what I do every day in ag productivity, we did talk about farmers using ag technology, precision agriculture, and being more productive on the farm. Labor's tight. It's hard to find folks that can sort of do backbreaking work, but with automation and with the newer capabilities coming online, they can avoid sort of that manual labor and spend more time in making more thoughtful decisions. They can avoid or at least be able to mitigate some of the uncertainties with weather and commodity prices that are happening around the globe by making good decisions every day. And one of the more exciting parts is farmers now can also focus on sustainable farming, which has a deep impact to climate change and climate variability. Right now, they can also not only be carbon neutral, but they can all be sequester carbon into the ground, sort of benefiting the rest of us. So that's so exciting that they have the ability to take advantage of this. But all this can only happen if they have the technology that runs on top of the broadband. And then on top of that, like when we talk about force multiplier, think about all the new jobs that get created as a result of this, right? The technicians that'll have to help them, the software developers, the control centers that'll have to be put in place. So an exciting area where even as we think about the youth coming into the workforce, these are the types of things they could do, which now we're starting to connect consumers with farmers and sort of and maybe even folks considering going back and living in rural communities because they have all the amenities that you'd have in an urban area. So all that is exciting, and this is just a big giant step for me to be able to get there and really get all the Minnesotans connected, and it will have an impact on the broader economy, no doubts about that. So very exciting day.
Wow, so well said, Teddy and Bill and Ty and Nancy, all of you, thank you so much. And I think as all these leaders have shared, this is just something that can accelerate every other aspect of growth that we're aiming for in our economy. So we're really pleased to make this announcement today and want to open up the floor for questions from the press. I'll turn it back over to Devin Henry from our team to moderate any questions that you all might have.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, so feel free to pop a question if you have it. Raise your hand using the reactions feature, and we'll call on people as they come. Dana Ferguson from NPR, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Wondering if you can contextualize a little bit just how much these grants are going to move the needle in terms of getting all the way to 100% access. What will this mean?
It's a great question. So we're around, I want to say 92% access at this point, and this will be an additional 33,000 homes and households. I don't know, Bree, have we done the math on the exact percentage bump that gets us towards 100?
No, and I just want to sort of emphasize the fact that the really important piece of sort of what I highlighted is the FCC mapping piece right now with the technology and that we have as moving the needle. We're able to get more data, more accurate data. So that can be a little bit skewed. And that's why it is so important for us to make sure that we're all checking those maps. And those map deadline for the FCC is January 13th. So if we can be helpful at the Office of Broadband, helping your communities or anybody to go on the FCC website to check the status of their service, we're happy to do that as well.
And Dana, one of the things that we've continually been doing, it's a bit of a moving target given we don't know quite how much money is coming in from the federal government, is to ask ourselves, what's the financial number that gets us to the finish line? And it's in the neighborhood, we think, of $1 billion roughly. But again, we aren't yet sure how many hundreds of millions are coming in from the federal government. We know there will be more investment needed from the state. And one of the things that we're grappling with legislators and others on is, again, the closer you get to 100, the more challenging that part of the state gets. Do you need to shift the program dynamics to, change the matching requirement, or think more specifically about, favorable terms that will get us into a place where the market will respond to such a program? That may change over time, and that's something that legislators have asked us to consider. We're debating and discussing. The task force has addressed this. So, we suspect that going into this legislative session, we'll have a range we can focus on as we think about the state investment needed, and as we get more and more information from the federal government on what's coming in through BEAD and some of these other programs, we'll get a crisper sense. But we know it's going to have to be both state and federal funding to get across the finish line.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, Dana. Any other questions? If not, feel free to email me with any follow-up questions after the event. Again, devin.henry@state.mn.us. And with that, we'll turn it back to Commissioner Grove.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining us. On behalf of Bree and myself and our agency, I want to thank Nancy and Bill and Teddy and Ty for taking time today just to share their stories. And thank you all for covering this. This is a good day for Minnesota. It's a day we should all be celebrating. And I think it's something that almost every corner of the state can see themselves in, with these dollars going out to help Minnesotans get connected and build great businesses and connect to the modern economy. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. Remember, more grants coming out soon on December 19th. Keep your eye on DEED's website, and a lot more to come from there. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.